Hello, everyone. This is our second talk dedicated to thinking about homelessness. I want to talk about values and how our values affect our structures, which then affect problems like homelessness. Whenever we're dealing with a problem to be solved, we tend to respond with these short term, quick solutions. For example, when we're dealing with a structural problem like homelessness, and our response is to donate to a food pantry or to donate clothing. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's a great start, but it's not enough. Whenever we're dealing with these problems to be solved, not just homelessness, we must start thinking of affecting change on a structural level. We youth are the future because we will be inheriting our world and its structures. We will get to decide what our values are and the values that we want to bring into our communities. How do we want people to be treated? Of course, this isn't just a conversation between youth and future leaders. This is a conversation that I think business owners and current leaders should be a part of as well. So let's just do a brainstorm about our future. I want you to envision the kind of future you want to live in, and then tell me, what values would you want people living in such a future to have? When we gave this conversation at our school, we would write our values down on a chalkboard. And one student who was with us contributed an openness to discuss our problems. Because there are so many disadvantaged people in our communities, like prostitutes and homeless people. But these people don't often come up in the conversations of advantaged people, at least not with a sincere desire to analyze and change why these things are happening. But if we did become more open to talking about these things more, it would be like saying, these things are important. And then maybe we could begin to face these problems and change. And another student who was with us contributed a universal acceptance. Because so often, instead of understanding why so much structural decay is happening, we choose just to not understand people who are in a different circumstance. That's why, instead of understanding why, or the economic, political, and social factors behind why so much immigration is happening in our world today, we choose just to call these people illegal immigrants and deport them. That's why we treat homeless people the way we do, this person said. So, an openness to discuss our problems to be solved, and a universal acceptance. That's a fantastic start. And now, I want to hear your values too. I'm going to talk about veterans, because this area is so deeply connected with so many of our structures. Our structures for war, our business models, how do we hire people, our values. How do we fulfill our values for how we value other people? So, how many of you have a close friend or relative who is a veteran? It's a lot of us out there. And for how many of you was this person a combat veteran? Combat veteran is the term that we use for a soldier who has been directly involved in the fighting of a conflict. Now, I want you to imagine someone you care about, or if you're one of those people who has that friend or that relative, imagine that person being a soldier, a combat veteran, and one day they are injured in a fight. They are handicapped or they sustain permanent damage. So they are honorably discharged, and now they don't have you, and they don't have any other family to fall back on. All they can do is support themselves. And instead of being honored for leaving college to be deployed, this person is shunned by all the employers because, one, there are plenty of other people out there who can do these jobs better than that person with that injury. And two, this person has post-traumatic stress disorder. Does everyone know what that is? For those of you who don't, it is a deep psychological wound that causes flashbacks of scenes from war. It's a difficult thing to go through, but it's manageable. But when an employer sees this on the application, the chances of getting employed drop because they look at it and they say, this person's a risk. What if they have a flashback on the job and cause a scene? This person's bad for business. So, injuries make it harder for people to find work, and employers don't like hiring people with PTSD. These are two reasons why, in our world today, 1 out of every 4 homeless people is a veteran. I want to tell you the story of my friend who's a soldier. And he's one of the kindest, most compassionate, most honorable, and strongest people that I know. His name is Trevor. Trevor was born in Chicago, Illinois, the city that, as he describes it, has the toughest gun laws and yet the highest gun violence. Trevor was born and raised in a disadvantaged African American community, and a lot of his family was involved in gangs. Inevitably, he too was drawn into that violence. And one of the things I've learned about this problem is that the things a person does, as far as you can know somebody by reading their background, for instance, when our teacher is looking for housing for his brother, and they look at his background and they say, this person was a drunkard, or this person was an addict, we don't want him, and it makes it hard for them to find housing. These things don't tell you anything about who a person is. They tell you how a person's been treated. An incident sends Trevor to court, and he decides to join the army to escape that suffocating childhood environment. Trevor was a paratrooper, which means he did a lot of missions involving jumping out of planes and parachuting. He has served most recently in Afghanistan and Iraq, and he has seen some of the horrors that the war has brought to these places. Once, a group of young children, about our age as he was describing them to me, ran up to him and some other soldiers screaming, "Help GIs! Help GIs!" because they all had bombs locked to their bodies. And some of Trevor's friends were killed this way, by youth who had been turned into human bombs. And another time, Trevor was standing in a foxhole, which is this deep pit that can go up to your eyes sometimes, with his friend, in the middle of a desert. And this was his best friend. The two of them were going to get an apartment together after they were able to leave the war. And it was his friend's job to stay awake that night and be lookout. But the next morning, when Trevor woke up to take over, he was talking and he noticed his friend wasn't answering. His friend had been shot in the head, and Trevor, screaming, fired his weapon in all directions. During his last mission, Trevor jumped out in complete darkness. He landed on a rock, breaking his leg in 2 places, necessitating a hip replacement. And today, as I'm making this video, Trevor stands at an intersection leading to the East Falls Church metro station with a sign that says,